The creature is known in Venezuela as El Silbón, which directly translates to the Whistler. In Venezuela, there is an urban legend about a creature that stalks the wetlands and prairies, lurking through small patches of bush throughout the countryside. The creature will make its presence known by a distinct whistling sound, which is said to come on very loud and suddenly. However, the further away it sounds, the closer the creature is to you, and if you hear it, it serves as a harbinger of your own demise. The creature is known in Venezuela as El Silbón, which directly translates to the Whistler. The Whistler is said to resemble a scrawny and skeletal man, dressed in rags and donning a wide-brimmed straw hat to hide his emaciated face. Despite his sickly, skinny build, he is said to be unnaturally strong and standing over 10 feet tall. Like many ghostly legends, the story of El Silbón is said to have originated with a horrible tragedy. El Silbón was once just an innocent child who sadly witnessed the death of his own mother by the hands of his own father. The reasons why the murder took place vary greatly depending on the storyteller, but most believe that the father murdered the mother due to her being unfaithful and promiscuous. Enraged at the horrifying event that the child had just witnessed, he picked up a knife and stabbed his father to death, disemboweling him in a rage of pure rage and overkill. The child had avenged the death of his beloved mother, but the sweet taste of revenge would be short-lived. The murder of his father caught the ire of the boy's grandfather, who then tied the boy to a wooden pole and lashed his back until it was utterly destroyed. The grandfather then doused the boy's extraordinarily gruesome wounds in alcohol. He was then untied and banished from the village forever with 2 starving rabid dogs set upon him, and forced to carry the bones of his father in a sack for all eternity, a sack which he now uses to also carry the bones of his victims. Due to the horrific circumstances of his fate, El Silbón does not kill at random, but seeks out adulterers and womanizers due to the role this type of behavior that played in his mother's death. He also stalks and preys upon alcoholics because of the alcohol that was poured over his grisly wounds by his grandfather. Despite this, El Silbón is feared in South America by any lone traveler. If you're unlucky enough to hear his whistle, it's already too late. He will strangle you or kill you with blunt force to the head before devouring your flesh and throwing your remains in his collection of bones with the bones of his father to be carried until the end of time. According to the legend, the only thing that can save you is the sound of barking dogs, because the only thing that this creature fears is the rabid and starving dogs that have been chasing him since his banishment. Although El Silbón is said to haunt the wetlands of South America, one Reddit user's story seems to draw stark comparisons to the tale of the Whistler, although it happened far away from South America in the Midwest of the United States. The story that follows is this Redditor's alleged account with the Whistler, a story he's been waiting a very long time to tell. It's an extremely creepy and very detailed case, one that he claims is 100% true, and he even provides video evidence, which we will show in this video. As a child of only 8 years old, the boy and his mother were spending an afternoon taking their dog for a walk through their neighborhood in Lansing, Michigan. The family lived on the edge of their neighborhood, next to a secluded, wooded, and swampy area. As they approached the nearby swamp and began to turn back, they heard a noise from deep within the marsh that made them stop dead in their tracks. Their blood ran cold, the hair stood up on their necks, and they felt a sickening, sinking feeling in their stomach as they heard a whistling sound which seemed to be directed right at them. They originally tried to dismiss it as just a bird, but unlike a bird, it had a very inconsistent pitch, giving it a much more human-like quality. The mother looked at her son with a terrified but trying not to look terrified expression on her face. She took her son's hand and explained to him that they needed to go home and get inside immediately. Already scared, the boy began to panic, having never seen his own mother this scared before. They got back inside, they didn't hear the whistling again, and over time, the incident faded from memory for both of them. However, only 2 years later, as a 10-year-old, while taking his dog out for a walk, he heard it again, just outside of their front door. To the right of the door was a dense and wooded area that was impossible to see through, meaning that any man or creature would not be seen if lurking within it. He stopped to listen to the sound. It was exactly the same as he'd heard it 2 years earlier, bird-like, but with the same inconsistencies that made it sound human in origin. A chill went down his spine as he remembered the terrified look on his mother's face 2 years earlier as she looked down into the swamp at something that he couldn't see. He then took his dog inside, went up to his room, and locked the door. After this incident, many years went by, and once again, the memory faded from his mind more and more with each passing year. He had told the story to only a few friends in passing over the years. Now a 24-year-old man, he moved from Lansing, Michigan to Pierre, South Dakota with his girlfriend Sarah for work purposes. It was the 4th of July, and the couple decided to watch the fireworks off of the bank of the Missouri River. They were in a secluded area near the campground that they were staying at, and very few people were around them. As the sun set behind the horizon of the western sky, a beautiful display of fireworks illuminated the clear South Dakota skyline. Cheers erupted from up and down the river as onlookers celebrated America's independence. However, a massive and ominous thunderhead began to roll in, making the atmosphere very eerie and making the air feel almost electric. The once excited onlookers began to clear out in anticipation of the oncoming storm, and police boats began to round up all other boats on the Missouri River, eventually moving further down the river to clear out that area as well. Despite all this, the Redditor and his girlfriend decided to stay back and have a few more beers by the river. Sarah stood up to grab more PBR tall boys from the car, leaving him alone at the banks of the river. With just him left behind, the scene was completely silent aside from the babbling of the river in front of him. And then, the ethereal silence was broken by a sound that chilled him to the core. A sound that he had not heard since he was a 10-year-old boy in Lansing, Michigan. The whistle was accompanied by the slow and methodical paddling of a canoe about 70 feet offshore. Able to catch a faint glimpse of the whistler through the darkness, he could tell that the figure was wearing a hat and a red sweater, but all other details were impossible to discern. The figure paddled the canoe until it was directly in front of him, and then turned it 90 degrees to face him head-on, and let out another whistle. Completely frozen in fear, he listened to the eerie whistling. It had the same bird-like yet strangely human-like quality due to the inconsistencies in tone from the whistler he had encountered as a child. How did this mysterious figure find him once again after 14 years and after moving 1,000 miles away? Finally, after some time had passed, he worked up the courage to stand up and confront his tormentor. "Who are you?" he screamed at the top of his lungs, but received no reply from the figure still floating offshore in front of him. The figure then whistled again and again before turning the canoe and paddling down the river and out of sight. Being a videographer, he already had a camera by his side and caught this footage of the whistler as it paddled away. Keep in mind that he was trying to not make it obvious that he was filming, so he had the camera pointed in the direction of the fireworks. However, in the last shot, you can see the canoe and a figure which looks to be wearing a hat and a red sweater. Here is the actual footage from that night.
Are you whistling? Is it you? Stop it.
Sarah returned with the beers, she immediately noticed that something was wrong with him. Still shaken by what just happened, he told her everything. Everything from the time when he was an 8-year-old boy until now. When she heard the story, Sarah was also completely freaked out. They both felt that if they didn't move soon, that they would both be murdered that night. So they packed up their things, they found their car, and left. Later that week, he showed the footage of the mysterious whistling figure to his mother. He asked her if she recalls that afternoon while they were taking their dog for a walk when he was an 8-year-old boy. She admitted to being creeped out by the footage, but strangely had no recollection of the event. He says that hearing this from his mother made everything even creepier. To this day, he's still afraid of being outside, alone in the dark, for the fear of hearing that whistling sound in the dead of night once again. Urban legends are normally just old wives' tales, usually made up for entertainment and as well as a deterrent for rebellious or sinful behavior, and we see many of these qualities in the tale of Elsobon. The idea of a deathless, emaciated figure is enough to capture the minds and strike fear into the hearts of those who hear the gruesome tale, and it also serves as a warning against sexual promiscuity, murder, and alcoholism. Even if the story of Elsobon is purely urban legend, most urban legends are based in reality, and sometimes that reality is even more terrifying than the legend itself. After all, where there's smoke, there's fire. The story of Elsobon originated in Venezuela and was experienced by a man in the Midwest United States. If he is real, he could be anywhere right now, and possibly stalking the countryside near your hometown. Or perhaps there's a species of whistling cryptids lurking among us, and honestly, I'm not sure which is more terrifying. Upon doing more research for this video, I found that many people in the Lansing area have heard the Whistler. So if you're from Lansing, or know anybody else from Lansing, please let me know in the comments if you've had any experiences yourself. So what do you think? Was the creature that this Redditor encountered Elsobon, and was it the same Elsobon from the Venezuelan legend? Or was what he encountered something completely different, and Elsobon is just a Venezuelan old wives' tale? Even if you don't believe, pray that you don't hear the haunting whistle of Elsobon while traveling alone at night, because it might be the last thing you ever hear before your untimely demise.